Hello everybody and welcome to the first video in a story a day through most of April and May. A title I chose mostly because it rhymed, and so there's no definitive start and end date apart from I have to get through April, and then I guess, well, did I say most of April or did I mean most of May, all of May? Who knows, right? I mean, I know what the plan is to get through April and May, and I said most of April because I started a week late, but that's the plan, and who knows how far we'll actually get. Hopefully we'll make it all the way, and if I do miss some, hopefully it's due to like illness or overwork rather than I've given up on the idea. But here we are, video one. I wasn't too sure what to do with the video side because, again, it's a story a day, and if I'm going to do videos, then I'm going to have to do a video a day. And my initial thought was I would just read out what I did, kind of audiobook style, and leave it at that. But I think what I'd like to do is read it out, but then kind of review it a little bit, and kind of go through what I like, what I didn't like, you know, what I would change if I could grow it into a bigger story, if I'd want to grow it into a bigger story, that kind of thing. Which, you know, may be interesting, may not. This review process is what I would do myself after doing this. So I thought, well, you know, I'll take you guys along for the ride, see if, you know, it's entertaining or useful for anybody. And we'll see how it goes from there. Now, I am not the best at reading from a screen like this, so I may trip up over the words a little bit as we do the actual reading part. And then if I do continue to do this format, I will try to have it so we can have the story kind of scrolling up the screen as I'm kind of reading it, or at least on the screen as I'm reading it. But for this initial go, this is all we're getting. It's my face, I'm reading it, and there's some not copyright, whatever it is, music in the background to cover the awkward silences. All right, so the starting prompt, or the starting idea for this, so all of these stories come from a very simple starting prompt, and the starting prompt for this story was Old MacDonald Had a Farm. We all know the classic, is it nursery? I mean, it must be a nursery rhyme, right? We all know the nursery rhyme, and so it was to write a story. For this one, there was no kind of set genre or any kind of set things that I had to hit. We haven't got that far into this process yet. Right now, it literally is just me making sure I write around 1,000 words a day, and in those 1,000 words trying to craft a complete story. I rambled on way too much about what the project is. Let's just get on to this bit. I'll try and do chapter markers so people can skip the rambling, at least the rambling start. The rambling end might be more interesting, but I doubt it. This is how you sell videos. This is how you sell people on what you're doing, right? It might be interesting, but I doubt it. Just go somewhere else. Just go watch anything else, really. Have you seen that video? The man, he just stares at a wall and there's paint drying. It's good stuff. Go watch that. www.dryingpaint.com. I wonder if that's a website that exists. And I wonder who has got an OnlyFans where that is all the content they put up. I wish it was me. Anyway, let's get into it. I'm going to read Old MacDonald Had a Farm, the story I wrote. I've seen people do this before. I don't think it was serious with it. No. Just get on with it. Old MacDonald had a farm and a family until his wife found him with the milkmaid enjoying some E-I-E-I-O. The divorce was bitter. His 3 kids and his wife moved out and took all the money and most of the livestock with them. Worse, his now ex-wife takes 70% of everything he owns. That's not the right word. That should have been earns, but that's to be picked up later. But at least he kept the farm and his life. The milkmaid was not so lucky. Although adultery was not technically a crime, society still had a dim view on it, and they always blamed the woman. Old MacDonald was an innocent victim. The milkmaid knew what she was doing. She was shunned, forced out of her home for fear she would be burned at the stake. No one is really sure what happened to her, but almost all rumours end in her death. And it's meant to be so most assume she is dead, even poor old MacDonald. He never leaves the farm now. What he eats and drinks he grows and brews. What he sells is picked up from his farm. New animals come from the circle of life. Old animals make his sandwiches. It's been almost 10 years of this lonely existence, and old MacDonald finds himself once more sat before a cold and empty hearth, mead on his lips and in his belly. He is not happily drunk, but he is happy to be drunk. A pain dulled is a pain dulled. So thin and gaunt. You can tell I wrote this quickly. So thin and gaunt, some would mistake him for a long dead skeleton, and in the darker times he imagined himself as such. Mead leads to sleepiness, and he succumbs in his threadbare chair. Comforts are not for him. He dreams again of the milkmaid, a beautiful young woman full of joy and energy. She bubbles around the farm, a creature of smiles. He knows his wife does not like her, knows she does not trust him around her. In a flash, the creature of joy disappears, and in her place is a bruised creature rotting from the inside. As she crumbles into a putrid mess, she points her finger at old MacDonald and screams a scream of anguish, pain, vengeance. He is startled awake by the sound of a cow in distress. No, pure panic. The near empty bottle of mead drops from his hand as he scrambles out the door. It is still dark, but the moon helps him see. Now more cows scream, and he runs ever faster. Before he reaches the paddock, he can smell the blood, the meat, the death. Even so, the sight that greets him is enough to make him falter in his run. His cows have been butchered, torn to shreds. But worse, they have been placed, the innards and flesh arranged to spell, and on that farm he had some cows. The police came and did little, for they cared little of old MacDonald. Old MacDonald, for his part, dug a big hole and shovelled the mess in. Then he went back to his threadbare chair before his cold hearth and drunk ever more mead. It was the screeching of the pigs that woke him, a scream that froze his blood. He didn't run this time, for he knew he was going to see, and on that farm he had some pigs. He didn't bury them this time. Instead, he looked at his chickens, his sheep, his horses. He wouldn't let them die in pain and agony. He thought of freeing them, selling them, giving them away, but that would not work. He had trained them well enough they would not run, and nobody would be able to move the animals away before the night came. So he slew them himself, as peacefully and humanely as he could. Then he retired back to his chair, blood-soaked, and waited. He was awoken by the pain of being stabbed in the arm, to find he was bound to his chair. A woman stood before him, covered head to toe in black. "Couldn't wait for me to finish?" the woman said. "No, milkmaid, I could not. The animals were innocent." "Where you were not, so you finally admit to it." "To sleeping with you? Why would I need to admit such a thing to you? For surely you would know." "I do know." "Then you know I never did. Then you know it was my wife who made the whole affair up just as she should get the divorce and marry the prince. Ripped my kids away from me for nothing but money and greed." The figure stood still, then removed her mask. "Hello, Irene. It has been too long." "Hello, father. Maybe it has." She cut old MacDonald loose, setting a knife upon the arm of the chair once done. She did not see old MacDonald pick it up, did not see him cover the ground from him to her, and did not see the knife plunging towards her back. She did feel it, though. It was a clean strike, deadly and accurate. "Goodbye, my daughter." For the first time in years, he set the hearth alight, and in moments out flitted a flame demon. The creature paused, looked at the old man, and then at the body on the floor. It skidded over, humming as it went. With a tongue longer than the creature, it licked the body, then smiled. "So you have completed the contract. Your family is no more. We are done here." The creature covered the body in flame, and it was no more. Old MacDonald sat in his chair, and the energy swirled around him. Life poured into him, and from where sat the pile of bones and skin arose a fit and healthy man of muscle and tan. He smiled. He had to find a wife, love her, raise a family, destroy that family, and murder all involved. But finally his curse was lifted. Old MacDonald was no more. Young MacDonald walked from his house, and with a wave set the place alight, for he was a mere farmer no more. So that's it. As you can see, I tripped up over a few bits where obviously I'd written sentences that didn't make sense, used the wrong words in the wrong order. This is all part of the process. Or at least it's part of my process. Is to so what we're trying to do here is just sit down, write 1,000 words, but get a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end of some sort. Now we are trying to stick to around that 1,000-word mark. So clearly, most things are going to end up feeling rushed. You're not really going to develop a lot of character. You're not really going to develop a lot of scene. But what you are trying to do is develop story. And story at its heart is very, very small, for want of a better word. If you want to think about Lord of the Rings and just Frodo's tale, his tale is he has to take a ring to Mount Doom, and he does. Right? And then you embellish from there. And, and that's kind of what we're doing here. We're trying to get the basics of a story. And then I'm trying to look through it and kind of go, well, what did I think of it? My initial impression is that from start to finish, there is a story and it does kind of progress. Obviously, we do not explain it. And we do not explain it well enough at all. I think if I was to build this up into a larger story, and that would depend on how many words you were really going for. So if I was, let's say I was going to do 5,000 words, so 4,000 more words than we've already done. I think hello wind. I think the main part of the story would stay the same in that instance. You'd probably start it from where it starts. You would want to introduce the family. You'd want to introduce the names. You would probably want to introduce the fact that the wife and the children are dead, probably in mysterious circumstances, because I feel that kind of idea just comes out of nowhere. And I would probably try and link it more into the old MacDonald nursery rhyme. We kind of start with it. We use the E-I-E-I-O as a way of saying sex. I probably wouldn't use it like that. I would probably use it to be something a lot more meaningful to old MacDonald, and possibly the curse that by the end of the story we know exists. Curse, contract, we don't know. I probably would not go into any more detail really about the curse or lengthen the ending any more than it is. So probably from the only bit I would probably bring out is when he is tied to the chair and he is introduced to who we assume he thinks it's the milkmaid. We haven't made it clear or obvious kind of going through the story that the reader should think it's the milkmaid. We haven't made that kind of jump in intuition. I think you can kind of make it, we've mentioned the milkmaid. Everyone assumes she's dead, but we don't know she's dead. So it kind of makes sense. And because we haven't introduced the family or the wife as kind of anything other than figments of the past, she is the most likely culprit. So in a way, I think what we've written, you can jump to the milkmaid, but I think we would, in the scenes where the cows and the pigs and everything are murdered, I probably wouldn't go so big and flashy and bloody. I'd probably go smaller, and I'd probably have at least 4 different animals killed, because I think I would use E-I-E-I as something that is kind of inscribed onto a corpse of probably just one single animal rather than all of them being murdered at once en masse. Because I think you want old MacDonald to kind of think about what the E-I-E-I is. And if I was going for the 5,000 words, I'd probably make it the names of his children, which we would have to put somewhere in the story. So, I don't know, Eric, Irene, Ellie, and Ian. Something like that. I'm ignoring the O. And there'd be a reason for that. I would want the O to kind of be part of the big reveal. And part of trying to put in the story, which we don't do now, because the daughter comes out of nowhere. There's no way to know that this is going to be the daughter, right? If you're writing this as a kind of mystery and you're hoping the reader might get ahead of you and work it out, or go back and read it afterwards and go, okay, where were the clues? There are no clues. There are no clues that this is the daughter. And I think you would want to leave some. And I think you would want to try and somehow bring the O into that. And the reason being, I think I would only want E-I-E-I-O to be said right at the end as part of the contract completion, if that makes sense. So you kind of really get that feeling of old MacDonald. And I would probably have, the ending line, or one of the ending, probably just before we do the young MacDonald, I'd probably do old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and then you would do young MacDonald walked out and set the place on fire, because I think that would just be a better way of ending it. But you would have to build up the tension and the meaning between E-I, and again, try to give the reader enough clues that they could jump ahead before you make it up, before old MacDonald works it out himself. Now, of course, the other lie about this is, and the thing you would have to try and balance and really try and get across in the story, which You're meant to loop and last like 15 minutes. Have I been yammering on that much? Yes. Yes, I have. Anyway, I thought we'd do this in 10. Yeah, the other thing is obviously the kind of big reveal and the big twist. I mean, there's a few, right? So the first one is, which turns out to not be the twist, is that, okay, actually, no, old MacDonald never slept with the milkmaid. But he did, because it was all part of the plan. It was all part of the contract. And of course, he says that so his daughter will lower her defenses so he can get the final move on. Again, I would not explain the contract and I would not explain his motives. I kind of want, if I was writing this again, I would want the final reveal that actually, no, it was him and he'd actually set up the daughter to come and do whatever this weird thing was. But again, you'd really have to work that into the story somehow. You'd have to work out the knowledge that the mother is dead, the kids are dead. And the reason why you would want all of the kids to be dead is so you kind of take the daughter out of contention. But then when you start doing the EIEI thing, which as the reader, you should start to kind of piece together, oh, hang on, EIEI, those are the initials of the kids, right? Why would the milkmaid do that? So again, you'd have to try and explain why the milkmaid wouldn't do that, I guess. She would know the name, so she could do it, because again, you want the milkmaid to be the obvious candidate for the target, for the person who's doing this to old MacDonald. But at the same time, you kind of have to put that other little bit of doubt in there. Well, why would she do that? Why would she invoke the names of the children? That doesn't seem to make sense. Why would the milkmaid kill the children? And do we think the wife and the kids were killed in mysterious circumstances? If you were doing a much longer story, like a short story, like 20,000, 30,000 words, I think you would go a lot more into kind of the background of the wife and the kids and subtle hints, be it newspaper articles or old MacDonald receives a letter, saying, I'm sorry to inform you, something like that, and then he can kind of go through that in his mind, all the while knowing that whatever he is kind of thinking and displaying, if you like, is not for our benefit. It's for the child he knows got away, because by the end, we know old MacDonald killed the wife, killed the kids. So he knows one is still alive. He knows that because he hasn't killed her. He also knows the milkmaid is dead because he has killed her. And that's how he can use this kind of situation to get the daughter to drop her guard and complete the contract. So I think this is the kind of story I would look at and go, I probably would try and stretch this one out. I don't mean stretch in a bad way. Stretch to me makes me feel like, well, I've got, an hour's worth of content. Let's stretch it over 5. That's not what I'm trying to say. I think this is a story you could build up, and you could build up very slow tension and trying to weave in the clues about what's happening. I don't like how I just brushed off the police that they wouldn't help. A whole herd of cows got murdered. I don't care who you are. Someone's going to be worried about that. And of course, we never went into, was it wild animals? It could have been wild animals are doing it. It seems very unlikely it was, because they, in this version at least, they spent out a whole sentence. But, a roughly badly carved E, you could probably argue, well, it's probably just an animal hit it in such a way. So yeah, I think this story, I think it works. I think, Irene comes out of nowhere. I think the kind of murder really comes out of nowhere. And I don't really think that's a problem, because again, you're kind of taking this idea of his whole MacDonald had a farm. Well, you know what that's about. And then you are trying to subvert it as you go and kind of layer and layer and layer. Obviously in the 1,000-word format, you don't have, well, I don't have the ability to kind of do the layer and layer and layer. So just trying to get that story out. But I think it worked. I think it worked, and I think it is a story that I would try to write again with a larger word count. And that's kind of my take on it. I don't know what you feel. If you want to leave some comments below about what you thought of the story, or how you would spin it out, or change it, or whatever, feel free to leave them. I'd love to read them. Also, let me know how you feel about this format, kind of, doing the story, reading it out, and then kind of talking about what I would change, what I feel is wrong, what I feel is right. I would love to hear your comments on that as well. And with that, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will hopefully see you all tomorrow with the next story that I haven't even written yet, because that's all part of the challenge. Why did I do this to myself? I don't know. Anyway, have a good one, and bye for now.